and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, dams and reservoirs in Nigeria are used for purposes that include irrigation, fishing, water supply and hydroelectric power generation. However, some dams like that of Goronyo in Sokoto State are drying up in recent times, raising apprehension among their host communities. Now, this, many believe, could induce hunger and affect food security, especially famine during the dry season. Now, more worrisome are reports that the rivers and dams face the danger of drying up in a few years if urgent remedies are not taken to arrest the threat, which is often attributed to climate change and other man-made activities. According to the World Preservation Foundation, 1/3 of the globe's major rivers and lakes are drying up, and the groundwater wells for 3 billion people are being affected. Now, this is a scary picture that experts say calls for concerted effort. Now, can Nigeria afford to lose its dams? And what's the way out? These are issues we'll be raising tonight on NTA Tuesday Live, right after this report by Hamisu Rogo.
What is happening to the dams in Nigeria? An interesting question if you ask me. Over the years, dams have performed magic in the life of Nigerians. They are a beauty to watch. They support mass irrigation systems. They are a major source of potable water to hundreds of communities. They provide drinking water to livestock. They are a source of fishing and transportation. They are a buffer against flood and bring harmony in the atmospheric system. That is not all. Yet, these dams are getting hit by sudden developments, human and natural, that impede their functions or even stop them short in the performances of their functions. I share two experiences. In 1952, Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sardona of Sokoto, built Lugu Dam in Wurno, Sokoto State. It was a big dam that for 50 years served the irrigation needs of over 1,000 farming communities in Wurno and beyond.
Okay.
He have 1,200 hectares of land.
Okay.
Kuma is all under cultivation. The reservoir capacity is 17 million cubic meter. Lugu Dam, the reservoir.
Yeah.
They have two main canals, Tutuda canals and Lugu canals. In Tutuda canal, they are about 10 kilometers long.
Okay.
In Lugu canal,
Okay.
it's about 7 kilometers long.
Wurno irrigation project is a dreamland. Hundreds of families are finding their life there. And then something happened. In the year 2014, the spillway that is controlling the dam broke down. The Lugu Dam, which has been sustaining the farming in this area, is no longer there. And the result of that is that there is a total collapse of the irrigation system around, that means around the Wurno irrigation project. The people of Wurno now can only produce garlic and onion.
It was a paradise lost for the farmers of Wurno. The farmers were inconsolable with the grief. The youth among them resorted to urban migration. The not too old resorted to onion farming. The dam, which was a major source of drinking water for contiguous communities, those communities were now forced to send their school children to long distances to find water. But why did the spillway of Lugu Dam collapse? Experts point accusing fingers to the flood of 2012, which really hit the spillway the hard way. The heavy rains of 2014 finished the kill. Yes, floods can be a product of climate change, and it can be said that affects Lugu Dam. But then so is drought, which shortens water supply to the dams and affect agriculture. In many situations, human activities affect the dams too. As far as dam systems are concerned, however, I think Kano is lucky. For over 40 years, 36 local governments out of the 44 areas in the state are linked directly to irrigation systems through various dam systems there. Year in, year out, various seasonal crop types are produced at bumper level because of the dam systems. I cannot put my money that the dams in Kano survive because of the conscious efforts of government or benefiting communities. That, I think, is the challenge in most places. Dams are never given the needed care they deserve in most places to remain the source of livelihood that they really are.
Well, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Professor Sani Mashi, who is the Director General of NIMET, that's the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Thanks for being here, Prof.
Thank you.
Let me also welcome to this program Babarinde Mukaila, is Deputy Director and Head Climate Change, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
We're also joined tonight by Dr. Victor Ayodeji Fodeke, who is former Technical Advisor Climate Change, the African Union Commission, Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Cyril. Good evening, viewers.
Also tonight, joining us from our Lagos Network Center is Dr. Newton Jibuno, an environmentalist. It's good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let me also welcome to this program Professor Abba Gambo. He's joining us from Maiduguri Network Center. Professor Abba Gambo is an agricultural consultant to the Nigerian Governors Forum, a member of the Presidential Committee on Food Security, and currently he's with the Desert Research Center in the Yobe State University in Damaturu. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Cyril.
Right. And also let me welcome to this program Sanusi Imran Abdullahi, former Executive Secretary of the Lake Chad Basin. He joins us via Skype from Kanu. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Cyril. Good to see you too.
All right, we'll work that out as we go on into this program. But let me just once again acquaint you with the procedures. That is, at the appropriate time on this program, you can get to join in the discussion. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of them. However, for those who will be calling in, we say this every Tuesday. For those who will phone in, do us a favor, when your call gets through to the studio, turn down the volume of your TV set. Just reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid a hurlback or the echo, if you like. So once your call gets through to the studio, you just turn down the volume of your TV set. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through is your name will appear on screen. Once you see your name on screen, it means your call is through to the studio. Just go right ahead with your question or comment. Don't bother about greetings. Go straight to the point. Be as brief as possible so that others can get on the platform as well. And whatever issues you raise, our guests would be willing to take them on. So once again, welcome to NTA Tuesday Live. Let's begin this discussion by putting in proper context what climate change is to the layman, to people out there, to many people. What is this climate change we talk about? And let's turn to Professor Mashi, the Director General of NIMET.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, God designed the world in a way as to make things comfortable for the life on earth. The sun is there. The sun is not just providing the light that we are seeing. Rather, it is the source of the heat you are having over the earth's surface. The sun releases the heat to the surface, and what is coming from the sun passes through a sort of a gaseous envelope that is covering the earth, which is known as the atmosphere. And this atmosphere is designed in such a way that when the radiation is coming, much of the radiation that is coming there, when it is passing through the sun, nothing happened to that radiation. Because the radiation that is coming, as far as we are concerned, God designed it in such a way that radiation, they call it shortwave radiation. It is excessively hot and not suitable for human life. When the radiation is going back to the atmosphere will now start capturing some of this radiation. It is this radiation, the heat that is trapped in the atmosphere, that will eventually come back to the surface. This is the source of the heat. It is the source of the climate. So what is happening here now is human activities over the Earth's surface, they are now distorting what is inside the atmosphere. So the implication of this, it means the things, the constituents inside the atmosphere that are trapping the heat, they have now increased in large number. So as a result of this, more heat is being trapped in the atmosphere, and therefore more heat is coming to the surface of the earth. So which means the climate we are having in the past is no longer the same as the climate we are having. That is why the climate change is occurring. So in a nutshell, climate change is just the alteration that is happening in the heat of the atmosphere and what is happening on the surface. That's one element first.
All right, thanks so much, Prof. Baron Mukaila, this is so important that you actually have a unit to deal with it in the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. And tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Actually, water is one of the sectors that, you know, is seriously vulnerable to the effect of climate change. But when we look at it, we're trying to see the difference between weather and climate. When we talk about the weather, we're looking at the condition of atmosphere at a given point in time. But when we're looking at climate, we're looking at long period of these weather parameters. And of course, to us in climate change, we're interested in two major parameters, the rainfall and the temperature. What we're saying now is we've observed some trend of change occurring between what it used to be and what it is now. That change in trend is what we are looking at as climate change. And that is what is causing the impact on the water, agric, human systems, ecosystems, and everything. And that is why it is important for us to understand the phenomenon in order to be able to apply reasonable and scientific solutions into solving the problems.
At the continental level, we still see this as an important factor, Dr. Fudeke. You were technical advisor on climate change of the EU Commission.
Thank you very much, Cyril. At the continental level, Africa took a very, very pragmatic step in putting together negotiators known as African Group of Negotiators for the 54 African countries to look at the effect of what is, I mean, when we look at climate change, people get confused about it, but you understand better when we talk about global warming. The result of human activities releases some of these 6 gases that are known as greenhouse gases, notably carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, and I mean, some of these gases, they are the ones that act as blanket to the radiation that is coming from the sun, and it is reflected back to the atmosphere. When this radiation is captured, it gives rise to warming up of the earth. That is why you can understand climate change when you look at global warming. The earth temperature is being increased because of the trapping by these gases. That's why we know as greenhouse gases. So the African Group of Negotiators have been negotiating this aspect that all the gases released from the African continent is just less than 4%. But the consequences fall upon everybody. And Africa was affected by the impact of climate change or global warming. That made the African Union to put a group together of negotiators in each country known as the Designated National Authority, in which I was one for about 3 years, to negotiate with our developed countries. We are called developing countries or less developed countries or small islands. We are grouped together to negotiate with them that the consequences of this warming is more in Africa because climate change or global warming gives rise to 2 things. You either mitigate it or you adapt to it. Africa neither has the finance nor the technology to adapt. That is, you adjust yourself to it or to reduce the effect because you require technology, you require finance to be able to do either of these 2 other steps, which are captured in what we call the Bali Action Plan, the 4 pillars of climate change: adaptation, mitigation. That's what we have to do. Those are the responses. And the aspect of what you need to meet those responses for finance and technology. When you look at it from those point of view, you see that Africa is disadvantaged. We neither have the right technology to mitigate this effect, and neither do we have enough money to adapt to it, whereby we can reduce and save ourselves from the consequences, of which one of it is staring us in the face today, the impact on the Lake Chad, that is the dam there. Because it's very important to understand this perspective, just as my other colleagues have explained. This is right with us. Climate is, the earth is warming up. It is like a blanket that is getting thicker and thicker. When you sleep under a thick blanket, you sweat more. It means that the earth is warming, and we're all sweating from the consequences of our activities of releasing those things from our sources of energy. That is, we power our vehicles with gasoline, we use coal, we even use wood, and all this, even the waste we throw away, when it decomposes, it releases methane, which is about 22 times in its effect more deadly than carbon dioxide.
All right, thanks a lot. We will begin to break down this. But let's go over to our Lagos Center and join Dr. Jibu now and say, how serious is this phenomenon in Nigeria? If Africa is at risk, how so Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Cyril. I think the panel you have out there are wonderful scientists and friends that I have known for many, many years, and I want to extend my greetings to them. They have virtually captured the entire issue relating to climate change, but the point they have not touched on is the depletion of the ozone layer, which is also what is partly responsible for the global warming. When this climate change debate started over 30 years ago, as you would recall, and my panelists there will also recall, it was difficult to assimilate. Many scientists, in fact, more than half of the global scientists did not agree that there was anything like climate change. Fortunately, the former Vice President of United States of America came up with his inconvenient truth that brought this whole thing home to everybody. And that has gone a long way towards helping the ordinary person to understand what really is climate change. Climate change, if I may add to what has been said already, is severe weather condition. When it is hot, when the sun, like was mentioned by the professor, it is very, very severe, more than what you would normally get over a period of about half a century ago. And when it is raining, even though it may not come, the rain may not come at the actual time you normally have it, it is very severe as well. So that has brought about changes in the whole climate situation, affecting most of what you have indicated and the intro, during the intro, rivers receding, lakes drying up, and agricultural life being affected. What I may add to what my colleagues have said is the fact that the adaptation solution and the mitigation that was handled from this part of the world did not come early enough. And that is what is leading us to where we are today. We did not participate early enough in mitigating against some of these phenomena that have now taken over and bringing about the kind of situation we have with our dams, with our rivers, with our lakes. But I'm glad that something is being done at the moment, and I hope that somewhere down the line we can catch up with the mitigating aspect of the whole phenomenon.
All right, thank you. We'll return to you in a moment. But let's now go over to Maiduguri Center, where we have Professor Abba Gambo. And we'll just put this to you easily. You are in the northeast of Nigeria already, and a lot of people say there's nowhere that this is more evident than the northeast. Paint a picture for us of what it's like and how this phenomenon is reflecting on where you are.
Thank you very much, Cyril. May I congratulate you for marrying my sister? You are our in-law, but you forgot your in-laws in Maiduguri, so you owe us a visit. You have to come to the Northeast, Maiduguri in particular. Now, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change defines climate change as an alteration in the atmospheric gases globally. Then when you talk about the atmospheric gases, it's supposed to be a particular set of gases that are in a particular shape. But then with human activities and then burning of forest, burning of trees here and there, looking for fossils everywhere, carbon dioxide is being added to the atmosphere, nitrous oxides are being added to the atmosphere, so this all leads to climate change. Now in the Northeast, particularly in what we call the Sahelian agroecological zone of Nigeria, the impact of climate change is better viewed when you look at the whole landscape of the Northeast, particularly what you call the frontline states. Trees are no longer there. People are cutting trees on a daily basis. The only source of energy for cooking in the whole of the Northeast is firewood. And people fell so many trees on a daily basis. Then another thing is, by the time you look at the temperature rise, you will notice that in the Northeast, the temperatures are always high. And then another thing is the rainfall pattern, which has reduced over the years. So the amount of rainfall that the Northeast is receiving has also dwindled down. Now the Sahelian zone actually has about 3 months of rainfall per annum. So for the remaining 9 months, the people are idle. And then because there are no dams in most of the places, people have no alternative than to look for other sources of income. And the easiest is to pick an axe and then go into the forest, cut down trees, come and sell. That's the easiest thing. So there is a kind of vicious cycle. Climate change, drought, desertification leads to poverty, and vice versa. Poverty leads to drought, desertification, and climate change. So if this is not viewed in its proper perspective, mitigation and other things we're talking about might not be better understood.
Return to you and we'll find out just what can be done. But we still have another guest who's joining us via Skype from Kano, and that's Sanusi Imran Abdullahi, who is a former executive secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. Of course, we do know that the countries, the African countries are now seriously concerned about what's happening to the Lake Chad. And so, you know, put that into perspective for us as we discuss what climate change is doing to that part of the continent.
Thank you, Cyril. The panel have scientifically described what climate change is. But let me put it simply to the common man. Climate change is to see that there are no rains for him to grow his agriculture activities, and also the desertification effect, that the forest is, the biodiversity in the forest is no more there, and sources of life that people have been enjoying as a result of the availability of water is no more there. So this together are what is being interpreted as the effect of climate change by the common man. As you know, recently we had an international conference to save Lake Chad, and the issues were discussed that Lake Chad was 25,000 square kilometers in the 60s, but now is virtually 2,000, 3,000 square kilometers. This is clear evidence of climate change effect in our continent. And let me clearly say that Africa, as mentioned by one of the panelists, is the least contributor to climate change effects or to the issues that bring about climate change effect. But Africa suffers the most. So it's important to look at it in this perspective, that we are not contributing much to the causes of climate change but we are suffering more. Therefore, the issue of mitigation and adaptation should be looked at very seriously, especially at the African Union level and then by individual governments. Efforts are being made to address this issue of climate change, especially by bringing in more water from the Congo Basin to the Lake Chad to bring about life, to regenerate the ecosystem and the biodiversity in the region. And we hope that the African continent will be helped by the international community, and the African Union will stand up to its responsibility to address this issue of climate change, in particular in Africa, and then specifically to address the issue of climate change in the Lake Chad Basin, to bring about life and opportunities for the people there, to address poverty and bring in economic development.
Sanusi Imran Abdullahi, while we can hear you clearly and the picture is good as well, we would need you to do a little bit of adjustment so that we can get a better profile. It would seem that you're sinking down a little. Yeah, that's a lot better now. And so we'll stay with you for a moment longer. And say, yes, you talked about the recent conference which Nigeria hosted, but it would seem that all were agreed that the resources are not just there, and there are no easy ways to fix it. So what do you think is going to happen?
Is that the new management of the Lake Chad Basin Commission are putting in their heads together to ensure that all those who have promised support are brought on board, and with the leadership of Nigeria, I think a lot will be achieved in the couple months to come. We have got commitments from the African Union. We've got commitments from the head of states and government of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, and also head of states of the Congo Basin. With the commitment of Nigeria and with the commitment of Mr. President, particularly in trying to see that this issue is being addressed, as also I think we are going to move forward very soon. And the Minister of Water Resources is working very hard with the UNESCO to see that in the couple of weeks, another round of meeting of experts is convened to see how the roadmap will be addressed and move forward.
You in a moment, but back here in Abuja, let's put this to you, Professor Sanimash. You heard the man said Africa contributes the least to these factors that are causing this change. Yet, Africa has the shorter end of the stick when it comes to the consequences.
Yeah, you see, quite sure the major gases that are contributing to climate change are mainly produced through industrial activities.
Right.
And in Africa, we don't have much of these activities. That explains why we are not contributing as much as our sister countries, like say in Europe. But what is important in climate change is to what extent are you able to adapt or to solve the problem? Because of limitation of resources, we are always at the receiving end. Even though we are not contributing much, but because the atmosphere has no boundary, it means what? If the climate change, it can affect you. And if you don't have resources to adapt or to mitigate the problem, then it means you are at the receiving end. That is a very simple logic that is there.
It's not fair, is it? The countries that are most responsible should put in more. Shouldn't that be the case?
Well, the reality is, since what is expected in global politics is that you look at within your boundary, look at the threats that are there, identify your potentials, and see how you can address them. So a lot of questions are being raised. That is, most African countries rely on someone else to come and help them in tackling the problem. That is the other side of the coin. And others are saying, no, since the developed ones are the ones causing the problem, then they should come and solve the problem as far as the situation in the African countries is concerned. So that is the two sides of the coin. As far as development.
Let's begin to look at some specific areas now. Water, for instance, we've seen that there's a huge effect on water sources as well as groundwater. What can be done about this?
Thank you, Sarah. I think, like I said earlier, the water resources, surface and groundwater. When you look at the demand side and the supply side, you will discover that the effect of climate change is actually making it difficult And what we are doing now is to see how we can effectively and efficiently manage the available resources through proper adaptation. These adaptation mechanisms, depends on what you are doing, what your interests are, and you'll discover that surface and groundwater, though they are kind of finite, but renewable, because the water comes and goes. If you don't manage it very well, you may not be able to get something. And now, when you drill borehole, knowing fully well that in Nigeria, we have a lot of boreholes scattered all over the country. All what you need is, first, you need enough data that could guide the development of the groundwater itself. Then you need to ensure that you do a lot of conservation mechanism to be able to look at what is available, what are you using now, and how do you conserve for when it will not be there.
Well, in a situation, what is available can hardly meet the needs. Well, there are so many logistics about that, because not a very small fraction of people have, it's just a small fraction that have access to safe water, or to water of any sort. And we're talking about conserving what we have, what cannot even go around to start with. How would that work out?
Yeah, you're very right. The global distribution of the water resources itself is uneven because of time and space.
All right. Okay.
Sometimes, some will have more, sometimes you have less within a hydrological year. However, some section of the country may have more, while some will have less. How you now balance the storage mechanisms, the abstraction and usage mechanisms within these time limits and space is a determinant on how efficient you can manage your water resources.
All right, we started late talking about adaptation and mitigation, but if we can't do much about mitigating, adaptation, how can that be done?
Because of the quantity of water that you have that cannot meet the need of the populace, you now move into the area of efficient use of that water resources that you have. Look at a situation like in Israel. It's so dry desert land. In fact, Sahara Desert is the fastest growing desert in the whole world. They have adapted themselves to use what is called drip irrigation. 2008, I was in Israel. The water goes to the root of the plant, and it is the water that the plant needs. But for us in Africa, we go on this sprinkling of water and we waste it. And my colleague has actually said, water has a cycle, hydrologic cycle. When you break that cycle, you cause problem of drought. You also cause problem of water that goes into the river, and the water that recharges the aquifer on the groundwater level there. So there is a need for us to move into efficient use of the resources that we have. There is an institute you have in US called a Rocky Mountain Institute. It came out with something called Factor 4. You double the efficiency and use half of the resources, and that is Factor 4. In any resource that we have, those that are finite, those that are renewable, whatever resource we have on this earth, when we move on to the area of efficient use of those resources, we talk about recycling, we talk about reuse, we talk about recovery, we talk about composting, so that we work within the limit of what we have, because population keeps increasing, the demand keeps rising, and that is why a situation that arises when you know that the birds learn, that men learn to shoot without missing. Then they also learn to fly without perching. We have always been warned years ago. Nigeria has been a part of the UNFCCC as far back as when it was started. And I remember that Nigeria's place there, moving along with the other African group of negotiators, is to let other of our developed countries know that we have a very peculiar situation with us. But for us, in matter of adaptation, we need a lot of awareness of our citizens that led them to introduce some cook stoves right now. That the first one that was approved when I was the DNA was the Safe 80. It uses only 20% of wood, so that you don't have to, so that you conserve the forest resources, because 85% of deforestation in Nigeria is caused by cutting down trees for cooking. The same thing is water, that you should be able to educate ourselves that if you don't need it, don't waste it. But we always just waste these things. So awareness and education are the cheapest instrument that we have, the cheapest sort of strategy we have in building that education and awareness that these resources we need. Like in our river basins that we have, there is a need to introduce the concept in our agric program to this drip irrigation that I've mentioned to you. They dose some of the chemicals they need that, and you see 60% of fruits consumed all over the world comes from the desertified land of Israel. There's nothing stopping us from transforming our Sahara Desert here to a real lush forest in which we encourage citizens, instead of cutting down trees, plant economic trees. Trees for food, trees for fodder, trees for fence, trees for pharmacy, trees for fuel wood. These are what we need to train ourselves and to educate Nigerian citizens that we plant when we plant trees, we're not just telling us to go to the ceremony of tree planting. When we plant trees, the trees bring the water from the soil so that we can have by evapotranspiration, so that rain can fall. If around the Lake Chad area there, we actually copy the system that are in Israel like that, you will find that we'll be able to create microclimate, and very soon you will see that I'm told that the Lake Chad is actually increasing right now to about about twice what it was in the year 2000. So we are beginning to see some results, and we should be able to really credit the government for doing this.
Okay, so one Nigerian who can adequately talk about adaptation and efficiency in resources management like water, of course, is Dr. Jibuna, who's in our Lagos Network Center. Yeah, you have traveled across the desert, and albeit on a personal level, give us more about the adaptation strategy. Oh dear. Okay, we'll return to Dr. Jibuna as we try. We're back with him now, right? Right. That glitch. We'll try and fix it, but in the meantime, let's see if we can get back to Professor Abba Gambo, who's in the Maiduguri Center. And we're talking here about adaptation. And, well, we've just heard that results have been seen from the Lake Chad. Let's look at what is happening to Goronyo Dam and what can be done to mitigate.
Thank you very much, Surya. Now, the issue of adaptation is, first and foremost, you must understand that the climate change concept is a reality. So once you understand that, you have 50% of the solution in your hand. Goronyo Dam in Sokoto State used to be, coincidentally, I did my PhD at the Usmanu Danfodio University, so I know exactly what is happening in Sokoto. And it's very unfortunate, plenty of the garlic and onions that we consume in Nigeria are coming from Goronyo Dam, but from the report that we just saw, Goronyo Dam is actually dying. But then if you bring back myself, if I'm to bring back myself to where I am now, especially in Yobe State, what the government did was, because they knew we just have to adapt, the first thing they did was to create a desert research center within the Yobe State University. Now that Desert Research Center has the mandate of moving all over the state to tell people that the climate change issue is a reality and something has to be done about it. And luckily enough for us, in the northern part of Yobe, where the rainfall pattern is less than 3 months, the government has done about 4 dams on the Kumodugu Yobe and then the river Hadeja that is crisscrossing the northern part of Yobe state. Presently, as I'm talking to you, we have about 250 hectares of irrigable land under the Nguru Lake scheme, and we have another 250 hectares under the Morguba irrigation scheme in Gaidam local government of Yobe state. And then there are 2 others somewhere. We have the one at Jumbam, and then we have the other one as Bolorom, all of them creating about 1,000 additional hectares. So Cyril, the impact of what I'm saying is the people that have 3 months of rainfall that only depend on rain-fed farming now have the opportunity to engage into dry season farming. And the 4 dams is likely to give jobs to about 10,000 farmers directly and indirectly. And so for you to adapt, like I said, you just have to know the problem first, and then you now know how to adapt. And I'm happy to say Yobe State has done great in the creation of the 4 dams, which were not existing before. So the dams are now there, and then the farmers are being enlightened to now come and then grow the crops that are there. Wheat was grown successfully, rice, onions, tomatoes are all coming out from the 4 dams, and in a short while, the northern part of Yobe State is going to be lush and green, like somebody said. But then there are still so many things. Firewood is the major source of energy for cooking in all of the northeastern states. Now, when you say don't cut down trees, what is the alternative source of energy? Somebody is talking about the stops. We all know what happened to the stops issue with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture during the last regime. There was a very big scam that was so embarrassing to the government about the stop issue. But then still, as I'm talking to you, Cyril, there are no alternatives to firewood. And these are things that are supposed to be done immediately. Recharging the Lake Chad from the River Congo or Bangui, crisscrossing 6 other countries will not happen in a day. It cannot happen in a week. It cannot happen in a month. And all these things that we are saying are here. The level of carbon dioxide in the air was about 282 ppm some 10 years back. Today is about 375. And the methane we're talking about used to be about 700 ppm. Today, the methane level in the atmosphere is about 1,774 ppm. So you can see these things are just glaring, they are clear, and there has to be immediate solutions to them.
As we go on, but first we have our first caller on the program tonight. And calling in from Birnin Kebi is our usual caller on this program, Umar Anache. Hello. Hello, Umar, are you there?
Maiduguri, I've said it all. If you said we should stop cutting the trees, what are the alternatives?
Right.
If you said we should stop cutting the trees, what are the alternatives? The alternative is government has to provide basic things that women need. Just like you said, firewood remains the source of energy in our rural areas. What are the alternatives to firewood? Government did not provide. And you know, this firewood is the major source of climate change. Because listen, a man cut tree every now and then without replacing it. So, therefore, there is need for government to draft a kind of national policy, on the issue of cutting firewood. Let there be a national policy on cutting a firewood, and the policy should capture everybody. from the village down to the city area, and capture everybody. And let's be in such a way that there will be a kind of enforcement. Because if there is policy and there is nobody to enforce that policy, it's tantamount to useless things. And secondly, the government is paying lip services towards this desert encouragement. This desert encouragement is one of the major problems facing our dams in the rural areas. And government is paying lip services. Lip services in the sense that any time they just launch a ceremonial decision on the issue of tree planting, where the what do you call it? The former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, where he launched his own in Kebbi State, the same thing, where Olusegun Obasanjo, then the same thing, Jonathan, the same thing, Buhari, the same place, almost the same spot. So government is paying lip services to this thing. May God continue to bless our country. Amen. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Umar Anachi. Well, let's see if we can get back to Dr. Jumuno in Lagos Network Center, as we are talking about adaptation, and he was just going to give us an insight into that as well. Can we hear you now?
Let me follow up on something that was mentioned about energy trees, and you see, it's so difficult to get people away from using firewood to cook. Even in my village in Delta, there are people that do not want to eat food that is not cooked with firewood. But we haven't realized that, especially with the kind of pilot project we carried out in the Saharian region. We planted energy trees, those ones that can be cut down in creating the barrage, the kind of wall of trees that will help in containing the encroachment of the desert. We planted energy trees, and we educated the communities that these are the trees you can cut for your firewood. But please, in cutting these trees down, you must replenish them. So we carried out a sensitization program that educated the people to say, okay, when you go out there where you have these energy trees and you cut down a dozen of them, please make sure you plant 24 or 36 more. And that worked. That was working. Not only that, we also introduced trees that you can just cut only the branches, but not the tree itself. And by cutting the branches, you help the trees to mature properly and provide the kind of barrage that we need for the encroachment of the desert. Yes, the desert is a major issue in this whole matter that we are talking about over water and the rest of it. The lakes drying up and the rivers receding, they are all coming as a result of desertification. Dr. Fadeke mentioned earlier on about his experience and what he observed in Israel. I also did a part of my studies in Israel. And as you may know, Cyril, the whole of Israel used to be deserts. They recovered the entire Israel from the Negev deserts. And look at what they have done with it today. And in terms of water, when you come to water engineering and how to manage water, they have the perfect solution in Israel, because they have, they have managed to build their dams and do the drip, like Dr. Fadeke said, drip irrigation system, and then of course the recycling of used water and have a way of bringing back used water into agricultural fields. We haven't gotten there yet, but we are moving towards that. And I think with time, we should be able to get into that kind of adaptation policy that will help in managing and containing what we have.
We have Kegama calling in from Abuja. Hello.
Cyril, how are you? Good day.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Okay.
I'm really enjoying what you people are discussing, as Professor Gambo has said it. In fact, it's only not northeast, but including northwest, are cutting trees for firewood. These are things that it needs a lot of sensitization, not only by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and including Federal Ministry of Environment. And these things have been happening for a very long time. I can remember in those days when we were in school, primary school, I could remember every year the emirs, the district heads goes for tree planting campaign. I can't remember when last tree planting campaign has been done in this country. Now a tree is being cut down. No one is replacing it. The other man speaking in Lagos has said it. It needs orientation. It needs sensitization, especially from the world level, from what we call in the Borno and Yobe, from the Blamas, the Lawans, the district heads, to the emirs. We have to involve them. Without that, it can't be possible. And Professor Gambo has already said there is no alternative. What is the alternative? You have to provide alternative. Without alternative, you cannot do it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, let's get on to Sanusi, who's in Kano, and then put this question again to him. Now, it's been said that another way is to recharge those dams. How feasible is that? Those ones that are drying up, because there's a real scare that if nothing is done urgently, many of the dams in Nigeria would be gone. How feasible is recharging?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I see dams are built for a particular purpose or multi-purposes, and also dams have lives. So the reservoir of a dam has a lifespan. And one of the critical things that we do not do normally in Africa is to maintain the dam properly. The dam is like your car. You need to maintain it properly to ensure that it serves you for the period for which it is designed, and you can also improve it to last a little bit longer. Now, the case of the dam in Sokoto that has breached might be also associated with the poor maintenance of the dam itself as a result of heavy flooding, and then, of course, the spillway might have been blocked, and probably there was no proper maintenance over the years. Now, the dams will only be filled when there is sufficient runoff. In this case, we cannot have the possibility of transferring water from another area to a particular dam, other than its source of the catchment area. But we have, in the last years, when I was in DM Consultants in Nigeria, have studied the possibility of transferring water from Dindima to northern Bauchi, and also there's the Hawal transfer, and there's also the possibility of transferring some water from Hawal to a dam in Maiduguri. So what we need to do actually is to have efficient use of the available water that we have. There's nothing else we can do other than to effectively and efficiently use the water. We may not be in a position to advance ourselves to entire drip system, but we continue to sensitize our people to believe the idea that it's not business as usual. We have to now manage whatever we have in an efficient way. But for the case of the Lake Chad, the reality is that Lake Chad is not going to be recharged in a couple of weeks or months or a few years. Yes, but it is a long-term plan to address the issue. Without recharging Lake Chad, we may not be able to solve the insecurity problem that we have in the Northeast. Because as long as people are poor, they don't mind whatever happens. So we want to encourage those that are in a position to really put in their hands together to see that these things are addressed. But for the dams, proper maintenance and also efficient use of the available water is what is that we should be encouraging people to do.
We go back to the phones. We have Ifeanyi calling in from Abuja. Hello, Ifeanyi.
My name is Ifeanyi from Abuja. Hello?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right. My name is Ifeanyi from Abuja. Yes, talking about climate change, I think you, the analysts and the students, they have done justice to this. All right. What I'm saying is that climate will always change, provided there is human beings and human activity on the surface of the earth. So what I suggest is that the government, in its capacity, to sensitize the people on the way of helping the environment and the climate. For instance, government on the ground, like state government, most of them have not had policies and programs that can help the people to know the importance of trees, vegetation, and green environment. And so what I'm really saying is, let the sanitization, let there be a serious sanitization on the grassroots level, so that the government, while they are allocating land and all that for agriculture, let them also sanitize the people and tell them the importance of planting and preserving trees. That the trees are difficult on the trees is a natural phenomenon. Trees must only be cut for others to grow up. So I am of the opinion that our state government, the federal government, should let the people know the importance of all these things. Because the layman, the average man in the village, the locality, does not know the importance of forest or forestry or trees. And so sometimes they even tend to clear the environment and make it cleaner by cutting down these trees. Sometimes they tell you it's constituting doors and, blocking networks, if I am to say. So it is left for government why they are allocating land and places for agricultural activities. Let them also say that this vegetation, this trees have been planted by the government and have invested, so let no man cut here. By so doing, people will come up with the sense that, yes, trees are important, cutting them down to it should be replaced. They cannot say so now. These trees should be cut this time. Other time, after some maybe perennial or annual, let place be reserved for nature. So these are the two ways government is help us. And the federal government, most importantly, is let the people of our state know that they have started investing in the activities to save our environment.
All right.
The climate is always improving. This is great.
Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much, and God bless you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ifeanyi, for calling in. Well, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll look at other aspects, how Nigeria can move to ensure food security in the face of the challenges that climate change has brought to the nation's food security quest. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back after this short break. Right, thanks for staying with us. Discussions have been robust so far, but we went out with our cameras as usual, and asked the citizens to tell us what they think about global warming, climate change, a threat to food security. Let's see what they had to say.
So what the government can do is just to ensure that they reinforce that the Lake Chad Basin Commission, so that any foreign donor, or maybe the World Bank or European Union, or any other agency that is in support of that, can hitherto can provide more funding so as to ensure that they dredge it and then make it more viable.
Yes, to me, I feel the government should take it head on. Why I say head on is not just relaxing, but doing, the expertise are there, whom the government employs. We feel they know what is the best for this time.
It's going to affect our economy as a whole, as Nigerians, and it's a very great challenge for the government to do something about it, because in the next few years, it's going to be worse than this. Now, we need to invest more on afforestation. We need to invest more on irrigation.
You see, I want us to understand that Nigeria is basically an agrarian state, basically an agrarian-run economy. And when we do not look after our dams and allow our dams to dry off, the larger implication is obvious, or they are quite very obvious, that farmers are going to suffer. The generality of the people of Nigeria are going to suffer because farmers cannot be able to irrigate their farms and produce the crops that will be required.
Matter of fact, I believe is going to affect the farmers in Nigeria. So what I think we should do in order to salvage this situation, partnership with agencies that are capable of maybe solving this situation. It will go a long way to eradicate this problem.
Well, Professor Mashi, there's been so much talk about sensitization, and we ask agencies like NIMED what role in this sensitization, which they say is key to understanding the challenges and how to mitigate them.
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, the thing is, in climate change, there are virtually, you can say, two major components to it. One, properly understanding it and its relationship to human activities. And then the other dimension is trying to understand the actions we are supposed to take in order to address that particular problem. Agencies like NIMED, statutorily, our mandate is to help Nigerians understand clearly what is the nature of the change, what are the things that are causing the changes, so that let people know exactly the way in which the climate of the country is changing. So in other words, what I'm trying to say here is agencies such as Nigerian Meteorological Agency are expected to always use the resources at their disposal, meaning that the data collection and analytical capabilities they have, so as to identify exactly the kind of changes that are occurring in the various elements of the climate, the temperature, the humidity, the rainfall, and so on, so that they can tell Nigerians. And this is precisely what we are doing. Every year, we try to look at we use our capacities and our capabilities, try to predict what is likely going to be the nature of the climate of the country in the year that is coming, so that we will now come and say, in this time we are expecting to have too much heat, or we are going to have too little heat, or too much rain, and vice versa. So, and at which location and at which time are we going to have these problems? So that now we will now advise people and say, okay, now that we are expecting that at certain period of time there is going to be heat, too much heat, so therefore, what kind of activities are people supposed to do? Maybe they should not be staying indoors. They should not be sleeping indoors. If they must be indoors, there should be good ventilation. If we are expecting that there is going to be very, very little amount of rain that will be received, what are we advising people? They should plant crops that will mature in very quick period of time. Or maybe we are expecting that when crops start growing towards a particular period of time, maybe rain will stop. We call it dry spell. So through that way, we are like sensitizing people, making them to become aware, so that from the word go, they know what is likely going to happen within that particular year. So once if agencies like NIMED give that kind of sensitization, the expectation is that people are supposed to be guided in their activities. Other stakeholders that are working with the people now, they will now wake up. NAMED have said that there is going to be drought at so period within the year. So therefore, Ministry of Agriculture can come in and advise and say, okay, you should go this way in order to avoid that kind of a problem.
All right, let's go to the phones. We have Sani calling in from Kaduna. Hello, Sani.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Sani. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. You see, I have made similar contribution on the same platform. Hello?
Yes, go on.
I have made similar contribution on the same platform at NTA Tuesday Live concerning the human activities and the world climatic changes. Now, I have made a suggestion that Federal Ministry of Information together with the National Orientation Agency should carry an assignment because our people are lacking the perfect knowledge
of
the factors that contributed in the climatic changes. People doesn't know that we have two variables that is controlling that need to work together. That's the rain. The features of the Nigerian rivers. Let me just put it this way: the features of the Nigerian rivers depends on the rainfall, the flow. That's during the warm wet season, our rivers flows very well, and during the dry season, it's a little bit dry. That's if there is no supply of water into that river, definitely our dams are going to dry. That's what caused this dry. What caused all this is the climate changes. That's the climate changes that people have to control the amount of greenhouse effects they emitted. That through the burning of fossil fuels, that's the uses of electronic devices, which are this chlorofluorocarbon that was being emitted by our air conditions, all these refrigerators and what have you. That's to say, our people need to be very well educated to know that the climate change is real. And once global warming occurs, definitely it changes the seasons. That's, for example, now, if it is, we normally receive rainfall in Kaduna from the month of April, May. That if that global warming occurs, definitely there is going to be a shortage of rainfall. That the season will interchange. For example, this season it happens these days. The symptom of global warming shows. That's to say, during this the winter season, it isn't supposed to rain. It rains a little bit. At the same time, we will see two seasons are colliding with each other. That's to say, we need a very perfect knowledge. Our government need to do very much to control this climate change. Thank you very much. That's just a little contribution I have for this program.
All right, thank you so much. And we'll begin to look at the other side of it now, how this might affect food security. And, well, if the farmers can't get a good yield because of the consequences of climate change, how would Nigeria's food security efforts be assured?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think one fundamental thing we should realize is that climate change is a cross-cutting issue. The effects and the impact cut across so many sectors, aside the impact on human beings. As far back as 1996, the first assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change had stated clearly some of these impacts that we're to expect. And if we look at food security, the inputs required, one of the critical inputs is water. In that 1996 IPPC report, it was clearly stated that the impact on the water sector shall be global drought and flooding. However, this drought and flooding, the global circulatory model in terms of predicting the amount of rainfall was not converging. And the report was saying, yes, that some places that are wet now may be dry in the future, while some places that probably are dry now in the future may be, wet then. So you now discover that as primary input into agricultural production, strategic water management that will ensure effective, efficient water utilization combined with good cropping practices, agricultural practices, good improved seedlings, and climate smart agriculture. It's just major thing that we need to do.
Smart agriculture.
Yes, it has climate smart agriculture has to combine, the water, all the inputs in an efficient manner, so as to meet the food security.
All right, let's take this call from Damaturu. Mohammed is calling in from Damaturu. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah. Well, first, what I want the viewers and the country at large to understand is that the climate change is real, and in order to mitigate climate change, I think the government have to do something, have to put something in place. One, we should look at it holistically. One, we should first look at the aspect of poverty, because the major tree cutters, or the majority of the population in the country, or let me use northeast and northwest, are the poor people that actually feeding based on the on housing of this firewood, and because of that, no amount of awareness or campaign can actually mitigate this until and unless the government is serious about it and is putting something in place. For instance, one of the contributors, one of the guests there talked about the drip irrigation in Israel. Drip irrigation is quite, because the government is serious over there, that they were able to manage that seriously. But down here, I think we should look at what is more common, or most common to us here. Majority of the households, if you look at the northeast and the north central, majority of the households are somewhat herders or rearers of cattle also. So we can maybe, in a short run, for instance, the government can put in place maybe just like they do with off-plout what we call donation that they usually give during rainy season. They can as well give this to the household, so that at the end of the day, they'll be able to give them just a little sum of money, so they can construct what we call the biodigester. They can be able to generate biogas from the cow dung. And if we like, we can build a community digester at the center, so that at the end of the day, you'll be able to channel all this the methane gas that can be generated from a relatively cheap source that can be generated. You can channel it to the houses, and that also may have its own negative effect that will require massive sensitization, because here you are now using the flammable gas to actually use it as an alternative to firewood burning. So on the short run, we can do that. It's quite simple. The government can do that if they are actually serious, to just build a small biodigester that can supply all the households while maintaining the green belt, in a way trying to conserve the forest to prevent desertification, as well as empowering the populace around the area, because there is a win-win situation. You grow the cows and use the cow dung to generate the biogas. This is a simple technology. It is being used in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. This is what they use, and at some point they even use it to generate electricity. So it's quite real. So if the government is really serious, this is a very cheap way of getting alternative source to firewood burning. That's just my contribution.
All right, thank you very much. And that's just a quick tweet here from Uludari Michael, and he says, indiscriminate borehole drilling also affects our reserve water bodies apart from climate change. Let's look inward. Regulation through integrated management will do justice. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, you see, on this issue we're talking about the climate change, the way the climate change is affecting the surface water, the groundwater too, is being affected. And to depend on the groundwater, as far as the sub-Saharan Africa is concerned, and Nigeria in particular, you have a lot of boreholes everywhere. However, you discover that the way the volume of water in our ground reservoir is also dependent on the amount of rainfall coming in through the discharge. The management of the groundwater has to be done in such a way that development is regional, and we can recharge our aquifer systems. We protect our recharge zones. There are many things that we could do to sustain groundwater resources. However, licensing and monitoring the groundwater levels fluctuation over time could give us an idea about what is happening and what management mechanisms, can we put in place. The regulation on one hand, data collection and monitoring on another hand, could help us to understand these fluctuations and the volume of groundwater reserves we have. And we can also do artificial recharge where applicable, where possible. And then when we do this, we can use this as groundwater reserves, so as to be able to meet the competing demand between, domestic, industrial, or agricultural use.
Okay. We have another call coming through from this time Mina. Mustafa calling in from Mina. Hello, Mustafa.
Good evening.
Good
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, the solution, in my own view, the solution to this issue is there should be, we should not depend on the government so that, like most of those people here are professors, they are government officials, and some are friends positions. So if they can go back, like the man in Kano or Meduguri, go back to his alma mater in Udus, meet the MCC president, go to secondary school. It will even cost maybe 1 million naira. Purchase trees, massive planting of trees. Then Nigerians are very religious. Open the Quran, then open the Bible, tell them that God said if you plant trees, it will help somebody. You understand? Like shade. People will do it because Nigerians are religious. And once people feel they are doing things because of God, and they know there is something to benefit, then the economic aspect again is, if you go to places like Kogi, where my state of origin, in my village there are so many cashew trees, because we know that once these trees are there, the seeds will be exported. Instead of exporting these trees, they can be sold to other states. They plant these trees there, and if you tell them that, okay, once you plant these trees, you're able to get this money too. People will do these things. Then in discussions like this, if young people are here, so that when our elders are no more here, we will know that this thing is like a, how do I put it now, like something that we have to continue to do. So people should include young people there. Maybe, you understand, geography student or whatever. They're mathematical students that will want them to go here and say, okay, we plant 2 million trees in the next 6 years. This is what we have in global warming. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that feasible? Is that feasible, Dr. Fadeke?
It is doable, it is feasible, it is recommended.
All right.
The aspect of it with a modification.
Okay.
The religious aspect.
All right.
Because nowadays, when people plant trees, we have a slogan that said, not only planting trees, you should also nurture the trees, and then you watch your money grow. Before people plant trees, the climate of their pocket must be changed. When that incentive is there, because we have a program to say every Nigerian a tree, but the tree that you plant, just as Dr. Jibono mentioned, a tree for specific purpose. Trees that you plant when you farm for agroforestry, that will be able to give you what you can put together as briquettes to fire your stove. Another caller mentioned the issue of these biogas digesters. China has over 42.7 units. India has over 50, about 50 million. Now, there is a program in Africa by the Africa Biogas Partnership Program. 5 countries were selected. They took another 5 and ignored Nigeria. This biogas, it's a sort of multi-eco solution program. When you set up like this greenhouse farming for women, you can farm throughout the year to solve the food security issue. The biogas slurry becomes fertilizers in the greenhouse. 12 months of farming. The biogas, the waste that you throw away, we are wasting our waste in Nigeria. Nigeria is the only country that wastes our waste. In fact, Malmö in Sweden, their waste generates 10 megawatts of electricity. We also find out that the waste in Abuja, FCT, consists of about 47% biodegradable material that can generate 7 megawatts of electricity. We've talked about it with AEPB. Last December, on the 14th of December, the FCD Agric and Rural Development, did a groundbreaking ceremony of the waste from the abattoir that was launched. But unfortunately, many people saw it as just a wasteful exercise. Today, Burkina Faso is changing the desert through the biogas program because it is one of the 5 countries in the Africa Biogas Partnership Program. It is the time has come to look at the issue of this biogas digester as a mega ecological solution program. You don't need to cut down any trees. The waste from your house is what is mixed that produces the methane, and people are already using it. The only other aspect is that the cost of waste management is reduced by half. The EU has mandated all the members that by 2020 they must actually embark on recycling of their waste, that by 2020 there will be 50% of their waste must be recycled to generate electricity. If every local government area has a biogas digester, they'll be able to solve their waste problem, sanitation problem is solved, they have organic fertilizers that are there that are cheap, they'll also be able to generate electricity to be able to take care of the small and medium scale enterprises. This is doable, it is welcome, and the time is right now for us to roll back the Sahara Desert by using this biogas. And tree planting is another additional factor. Trees for food, a guy that was planting trees got about 350,000 naira after coming from US, waited for a job, he didn't get it. He told the mother, "Mother, I'm not looking for a job again. I'm not planting trees." He was planting watermelon and some fruits and all the rest. When you start a job as a copper with 350,000 in your pocket every month, the climate of your pocket has changed.
All right. Speaking about checking the desert, we have planting trees and crops, and Professor Abba Gambu, you used to be head of Department of Crop Production at the University of Maiduguri. What are the advantages of this approach in stopping the desert and ensuring food security?
Thank you very much, Cyril. I'm a very practical person, and I'm thinking about the practicability of all the things we are saying. For example, in Maiduguri, there is a curfew by 10:30. I'm thinking of how to reach my home. Now, after this program, you can look at the time. So the desert is real. My mother comes from Gubbio in northern part of Borno State, and some few weeks ago I was at Gubbio. Let me give you the practical scenario. I entered Gubbio in the morning around 10 o'clock, and then I was asking, where are the kids? They said all the kids have gone looking for water. Then they came back around 1 p.m., sorry, then with some pails of water. And the temperature was about 41 degrees centigrade. Now they gave me a pail of water to take my bath in the evening. And then I thought of the going and coming back of the kids looking for water. And I said, no, I will not waste your water by taking my bath. I left the village without taking my bath. Now talking about tree planting, there has to be a conducive environment for the trees to thrive. Nobody is talking about the conditionalities for planting trees so that they can thrive. You can now take 1 million trees to northern part of Borno State. I assure you, only less than 1% will survive because there is no water. People are walking several kilometers by day to look for water. There is no single dam in northern part of Borno State. We are saying there has to be some systems that can actually support the environment in the northern part of the state, but nothing is happening. Then, Cyril, another very important thing is, you have now a kind of comparative advantage. You give somebody in the northern part of Borno State a bucket of water, he has livestock, he has family, and then you are asking him to plant trees. Is he going to pour the whole bucket of water onto the tree, or is he going to give his kids to drink, or is he going to give his wife to cook for the kids? So you can look at the vicious cycle that is happening there. So for you to make sure that the trees can thrive, you must make sure that water for the trees is also equally available. I remember some states are doing certain things. In Katsina State, I remember, just like Engineer Kaigama, one of the people that called, he said we have to emphasize all this. I remember in Katsina, there was a time when they said, for you to marry a girl, you have to come with some trees for bride price. And then the trees are to be planted and nurtured by the woman once she comes into your house. But then you have to provide the water for that. Then I remember a system in Imo State that Roger Sokoroja is doing. Once you deliver a baby, they give you 1 seedling of oil palm. And then when you name your baby Emeka, then you also name that particular seedling Emeka. And then while you are nursing Emeka, you are also nursing the Emeka oil palm seedling. But then there has to be a source of water and conducive environment for that. So if there is no water, the whole issue of plants growing, plants do not grow without water. That's a fact.
So what are we going to do to mitigate that factor? And let's go over to Imran, Sanusi Imran, who's in Kanu. What is the way out?
I think, Cyril, what we need to do is to try to strike a balance. There are some particular trees. There are some particular trees that can grow with little water, and there are trees that require more water to grow. What I need Prof to understand is that we have to start somewhere. And obviously, we just have to start. The research institute should be able to tell us which kind of trees or which special breed of trees we can plant at the onset of rainy season, so that they can survive that period of 3 months or more. And then with little supplementation, we should be able to continue to grow the trees. In the case of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, where I was the chief executive for 7 years, we have encouraged afforestation programs. And we have supported Northern Borno through the Lake Chad Basin Commission, and other areas of Niger, Cameroon, and Chad to trees to reforest their areas. We call it land regeneration program. So we have to start somewhere. Of course, you may not get all the trees that you plant, but certainly some of them will survive, and there will be the incentive to continue. So we need to encourage Prof to believe that, yes, it can be done, and we should start small by small, and then we'll be able to make it.
Let's come to Professor Mashi. Really, are the consequences of climate change reversible?
Certainly, yes, they are. Because the climate was not like what we used to have. We have, for instance, situations whereby certain places where we don't record used to experience flood, we are experiencing flooding in those kind of places. So which means that if there were no human activities that caused the change, we should expect that there is the likelihood of the consequences occurring will be very, very minimal or even not there. So in other, what we are trying to say here now is, once if we adjust our way of doing things, our way of our activities that are contributing towards the climate change, we should expect that there will be significant improvement towards the bad conditions we are now experiencing. So it's quite possible.
Yeah, but then again, let's go back to agriculture. And you talked about rainfall patterns having changed, and this is a source of concern to most people who are farmers. One year you're looking at, you think the rains have started, and it's not, and you put out these notices regularly. How well do you think that the farming community benefits from these reports that you put together?
You see, when at the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, whenever we release our predictions, among the important variables we try to measure is when are we expecting commencement of the rain to be effective. When you say effective commencement of rain, meaning that rain has established itself that you can plant. We try using a number of variables, not just the occurrence of rain, but even the condition of the moisture and some other variables, try to predict when is it likely going to be the precise date when it will be good for you to start planting. So when we give that and say, don't plant until first week of June, then it means the advice we are giving the farmers is that if you plant earlier than that, there is likelihood that your cropping will not succeed. And then if we predict that the growing season this year is likely going to be only 70 days, then it means if you this year you make the mistake of planting a seed that will require 90 days between sowing to harvesting, then it means there is likelihood, planting and harvesting, it will require 90 days. It means there is likelihood that you are going to record low yield, or you are not even going to record any yield at all. So the idea, what we are trying to say here now is, through the prediction we are releasing, we normally advise farmers what to plant, when to plant, and then the kind of problems they are going to experience in the course of planting, so that if they are given this kind of notices early enough, then it means they will become well prepared. And if they don't become well prepared, it means they should be ready to bear the consequences. This year, when we are releasing our 2018 prediction, a farmer from Tangaza, local government in Sokoto State, he came and made a testimony. He said, last year when we made prediction, we predicted that sometimes in August, in that particular area, there was going to be a dry spell. Dry spell means rain has started, suddenly it will cease. So therefore, if it ceases, it is known as dry spell, we advise that farmers, they should find a means of supplementing the rainwater, so that at least the crops will continue picking. So he came and confessed and said, when he looked at our report, he advised some of his friends and said, let's do this. They say, no, God is the one that controls and all this.
Right, you know, because this is part of it. How do you balance that? Because they say, well, it's God who decides. Like Kola said, we're very religious people, so so it's God who decides when it will rain and when it will rain. How do you deal with such issues?
You see, the issue is science is real.
Okay.
That is just that. Science is real. So once we appreciate the fact that science is real, then let's try and keep other things aside and then work by what science is telling us, or do our best. And then we keep on praying, and at the same time, absorb what the science is telling us, we'll make a progress, but like that.
Okay, let's go to Lagos now. Dr. Jibuno, so bringing down to the barest minimum those activities, those things by humans that are likely to worsen the situation. Let's begin hearing them from you at this point in time, how we can mitigate the effects.
It now boils down to water. you know, when you look at the receding lakes, you look at the drying up of rivers, you look at the disappearing grazing fields. That's one issue we have not talked about, grazing fields, which is also another security issue. We have to begin to look at how to restore all those. What we did in Dambata area of Kano State was, first of all, to find water. We drilled boreholes, and where we were not able to find water, we requested for some river basin authorities to pipe water to the localities. Because once you give water to a community, it's like you've given them everything. And we talked earlier on about sensitization. If the communities are able to have water, and you now start planting your trees that will restore greenery and help to contain the lakes and the boreholes that you have, it is a lot easier to plant your trees and nurture them. Because we restored greenery in a desert town in Makuda over a period of 2 to 3 years by doing that, following this pattern, and also following the experience one gathered from other parts of the country where we are having serious desertification issue. It is the desertification that is responsible for the drying up of Lake Chad, for instance, or partly responsible. It's also desertification that is affecting, making most of the lands unfarmable. So, and how do you address the issue of desertification? Like we have mentioned, is by building wall of trees like it's being done with the Great Green Wall project that will halt the encroachment of the desert. Because what we have is the encroachment, and then what follows the encroachment is desertification, the dust that travels thousands of miles away from the very spot where it started. And it is also that desertification that is bringing about the siltation of rivers and lakes. So water becomes very, very important. And we have to find a way of conserving what we have and managing them well. It's not, because you see, if we don't manage the water that we have and then control or regulate this issue of boreholes that we talked about, then we are going to get into ecological problem in future. Because if we continue to allow boreholes to be drilled everywhere without controlling them, then we are going to have a serious, in another 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to have a serious problem.
Well, how good are we in managing water resources? And especially, you see, Dr. Jibono talks about indiscriminate drilling of boreholes. You find a lot of that in urban centers because water supply can't, go round.
Yeah. Thank you, Syria. It's very accurate and right. When you look at all sectors that required water, being it agric sector, domestic, industrial, like the professor from Maduguri rightly painted, if you have a bucket of water and you have your children, your wife to cook, who will you give? The problem is, one, are we doing enough continuous assessment to actually know what is available? It is when you know what is available that you can manage. Something you cannot measure, you cannot manage. First, we need adequate data for measuring and monitoring. That will give us an idea about how to develop the development strategies and so on and so forth.
Dr. Fadeke, this is all a global phenomenon, right? And it's not peculiar to Nigeria, Africa. It's climate change is global. But of course, at the global level, there have been challenges with agreeing on the strategies. quite recently, you would find out that the U.S. pulled out of a major agreement. How has this how would that affect what the world is trying to do?
The year 2015 was, was a watershed when we were talking about the impact of climate change. And at the COP21 in Paris, I was there, and the over 100 nearly 190 heads of government considered a document to actually look at what we should do concerning how to reduce the greenhouse gases. And they brought a document before known as Intended Nationally Determined Contribution, which later on became the nationally determined contribution of what everybody has to do to reduce, that is to mitigate, to reduce the level of the greenhouse gases. And Nigeria was part of this program, and I think that was the first time that we see our head of state took part there. That was very, very commendable. Now, when you look at those actions there now, it is a successful program because we now have on the table what each country will do till the year 2020, by 2020 and 2030, when it's considered that you have reached what you intended to do to reduce the greenhouse gases that's responsible for this global warming. Now, we talk about adaptation to this program of this global warming and the water usage that we have been discussing about. The United States Embassy in Abuja did something. They had shortage of water to make the embassy green. Some of you will be surprised how they get the water to, it's not from the sort of the water board that they get their water. They actually harvest this rain. That is, rain harvesting is what we need to talk about. They harvest this rain. About 51 inches of rain is harvested and stored in their basement. That's what is used to make the environment very green. They also did another adaptation strategy. The powering of that embassy is by solar panels that they save about 21 million naira every year from electricity. COP21 talked about embarking on replacing the fossil fuel for electricity by 100% solar panel. That is using the renewable energy from the solar and from other areas of wind and biomass and all the rest there, so that we can no longer depend on what is causing the problem for the whole world. Everybody is contributing. Nigeria is contributing, and the Department of Climate Change has actually got Inter-Ministerial Committee on Climate Change, which you are part of it, to be able to put the private sector on the front burner as COP21 did it, and for the first time, they brought the private sector into this arrangement. So these are part of the global play that you have seen, the state of play right now. We went to Morocco, we also went to Bonn last year to look at the success, at the benchmarking of how much countries have lived up to their, it is not legally binding. It's what you intended to do that is now your own contribution to it. And this is encouraging. We decided to give the U.S. Embassy as the first green embassy in Africa for embarking on this initiative, because rain falls, and when rain falls heavy in some areas, the best thing to do is that, when you talk about drought, you talk about flooding. The rain that falls that causes flooding, we need to be prepared and to harvest that flood into a sort of a dam. There are about 300 rivers in Nigeria that are not yet dammed, that will provide us with water for irrigation and also for electricity. These are the things, UNIDO has told us that 300 rivers in Nigeria. There are some of the dams too that are not even active right now. That we need to take advantage of this so that we can have food security and can avert food insecurity, because the greatest impact of it is poverty and hunger and diseases that is spreading.
All right, we're rounding off now, so we'll just quickly ask Professor Abagambo to respond in just a minute to this tweet I'm going to read. I know it's it's way past and you have concerns about getting home, but hopefully our station in Maiduguri will take care of that and so you can get home safely. But this is the tweet from Abdul Karim Husseini Al-Hatu. And he says, Africa south of the Sahara should build a research center to cater for various national challenges. Example, Congo Basin to charge some of all the dams, create technology to cook instead of firewood. And he says high-yielding seeds should be procured. What do you say to that, Professor Randolph?
Thank you very much, Cyril. Now there are 3 solutions that are practicable. The first one is all the dams we're talking about have sources of water that is filling them. So if Goronyo Dam, for example, what is the source of water? Then you just have to make sure that the canalization where the water flows is not blocked. Like in Yobe State, the Nguru Wetlands project that is working, you have the problem of Taipa grass that is blocking the movement of the water. So you have to now cut up the Taipa grass to make sure that the water moves correctly. And then secondly, Cyril, talking about research institutes, the Nigerian Agricultural Research Council has about 17 different research institutes under them. All the research institutes have been on strike for about 5 months. I think they just resumed about 2 weeks ago. Now in the Sahelian region that you're talking about your street, we have just 90 days of rainfall. But luckily, the research institutes have come up with crop varieties that we have the 40 days groundnut, we have the 40 days cowpea, we have the 70 days millet. All this is practicable. Now, the final thing I want to say is religion matters. Really, religion matters. So we just have to be environmentally conscious according to our beliefs. Islam says even in war, you should not cut down trees. Even under wars, you should not cut down trees. So if such things are propagated, I'm sure all the solutions we're looking for will be in our hands. And about the security issue, Cyril, if I cannot go, I will sleep in your studios here tonight.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your being on this program, Professor Abba Gambo. I'm sure somehow you'll get home safe. That undertaking will happen through a network center in Maiduguri. Thank you very much, Professor Abba Gambo. He joined us from Maiduguri Center. Thank you and stay safe. And also time for us to say thank you very much to Sanusi Imran Abdullahi, former Executive Secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. He joined us from Kano via Skype. We'd like to thank you very much for being part of this program. Hopefully you would not have those security challenges getting home, right? Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. And from Lagos Network Center, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Jibuno, Newton Jibuno. Thank you for being part of this program. It's good to see you on this, right?
Having me.
Thank you very much. And back here in Abuja studios, let's say a big thank you to Dr. Victor Ayodiji, for the former technical advisor, Climate Change, the AU Commission. Thank you for being here.
I wish every day of your marriage to be honeymoon.
Thank you very much. And thank you also, Babarinde Mukaila, Deputy Director, Head of Climate Change, Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, viewers at home.
Right, and big thank you also to Professor Sani Mashi, Director General, Nigerian Meteorological Agency.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very
Let's
good
all
night.
hope that the rainfall would be adequate this time around.
Certainly, yes.
Okay.
That's what we pray for.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you.
And thank you also for being part of this program. Next week we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.